Thanks for joining us at the 2025 Zero Emission Fleets Reconnect Conference. These conference presentations are proudly brought to you by Plug-in BC.
Please join me in welcoming the moderator of this panel, Eve Howe, Senior Manager, Policy Development and Decision Analysis at Translink, to the stage to introduce the panel in session. She's already here because I thought it would be a good idea to just get going. So there we go. Round of applause for Eve. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Welcome back after lunch. So my name is Eve. I'm with Translink. I work on the policy team there. Our team is responsible for the long-range regional transportation strategy, Transport 2050. Some of you may have heard of it. Amongst other things, and within there, we talk about all sorts of goals and objectives we have in our region, and one of them is zero emissions when it comes to transportation. And I'm here to talk about infrastructure, or I'm here to moderate this conversation about infrastructure. I won't be doing that much talking. And I think we heard from the first session how important infrastructure is, making sure that that's something you include from the outset in your considerations. So I'm joined by an awesome panel here representing private sector and public sector to have this conversation. And each of them will, kind of similar to the other panel, tell you a little bit about what they do and their role. And I'll start with Cory Farquharson. Nailed it. Nice. Who is a Senior Account Manager for the transportation sector at BC Hydro. Cory is focused on supporting our transit, rail, and marine customers with low-carbon electrification initiatives from BC Hydro's Electrification plan, working towards emission reductions of 930,000 tons of greenhouse gases through studies, implementation, demonstration, applications by the end of 2026. Cory has a marketing degree from UBC and has been with BC Hydro for over 15 years. So over to Cory first.
Thanks, Eve. And as Eve said, it's so nice to be right after lunch as everyone's full, and now you get to hear about electricity. So as Eve said, Cory Farquharson, Senior Key Account Manager working with the transportation sector, and excited to work with a number of customers. I think as we heard this morning, electricity is kind of cool, or maybe I'm biased, but it is a very interesting topic, and we're excited to work with our customers to try to figure out how we can work with you and really plan out for your future as well as your infrastructure needs. So just a little bit to highlight around what BC Hydro's been doing and where we are and where we're going is we're obviously quite a large system with serving over 5 million customers, with over 30 hydroelectric dams, 125 independent power producers. And then that number of independent power producers is looking to expand with a recent call for power and adding additional generation onto our system. A good old graph. We've been mapping out kind of our plan for what the anticipated load across the province is going to look like. And if anyone is looking for some lovely light reading to either their children or significant others late at night, a 124-page document that you can go and check out online is a great read. But it does actually highlight what we've seen, and we're using benchmarkers to make sure that we're continuing looking at what the load forecasts are and how we can continue to build out our system to support that. And so as you can see, the kind of tracked line in the middle is what we've been marking for as time has been going on. And then we've got an accelerated load from the green side and then kind of a low load scenario, kind of continuing to map that out as time goes on and as we work with more customers to plan out those different load requirements. So you may have heard or you may not have, but BC Hydro has made an announcement about a $36 billion capital investment plan, just some chump change to build out our systems. But ultimately, we're continuing to invest in our system, and I hope that this does showcase that we are continuing to build out for our 10-year capital plan, with $21 billion going towards sustainment, so reinvesting in our systems, continuing to build out. I think even just for the Lower Mainland, about $7.8 billion of that is going towards reinvesting in our substations and our systems, distribution systems, transmission systems, to keep supporting the various kind of load requirements on our grid. And then, as you can see, $10 billion for future load growth to continue to support electrification. How do we continue to electrify? It's probably a bit biased for the guy from the utilities to say, let's just keep electrifying, but how are we going to do that, and how are we going to do that sustainably and efficiently is kind of a multitude of different ways. Is that we're looking at building out our systems from a number of different pieces, and kind of what I'm demonstrating here is that we're looking at opportunities with battery storage systems. We're looking at, as we've heard this morning, how we integrate bidirectional, so looking at load displacement opportunities with solar panels and wind generation and other opportunities like that. And then also at the same time, energy efficiency, which is really going to be prominent as we continue to move forward here. Hydro just made an announcement for $700 million plan for continuing our energy savings and efficiency plans. So we are continuing to look at that opportunities too. Another big piece, and I'm going to call out my colleague Jason Scultetti, who's in the back, or Blake as well. Hi, Jason. He has all the answers. I'm just the guy that gets the microphone. But ultimately, if you are looking to start planning what your fleets will look like and how do you electrify, what sort of infrastructure you need, what sort of charging requirements are, we're here to help. And so we want to build that out. Truthfully, selfish indulgence, it also helps us plan our systems, but that's a side point. But we are looking to continue to work with customers on how we look at your fleets and how you are going to plan to charge those. And I guess the last piece to kind of conclude on is making sure that you factor in something that sometimes gets missed, is what sort of rates you need to apply, or what sort of rates you're looking to leverage for your fleets or for your systems, as well as what that metering configuration looks like. I think we've seen a couple examples as of late where customers are coming to us and be like, oh, right, we should probably figure out how to charge at a lower cost during night. But then you need a meter, and then you need to redo the design. So really figuring that out kind of at the forefront so we can help work with you and plan that out. And with that, I pass it over to Eve.
Thank you, Cory. Our next speaker is Adam Franklin. He is a senior electrical engineering associate with Prism Engineering. Adam's a subject matter expert for Prism's EV charging, solar PV, and energy storage service offerings. He brings over 10 years of experience with involvement in carrying out the electrical aspects of energy management projects, performing power quality analysis for electrical distribution systems, and preparing technical reports. His recent work includes completing numerous EV-ready fleet plans, integrated energy audits, load management studies, and feasibility studies for organizations throughout BC and Western Canada. Over to you, Adam.
Great, thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here, give the consultant side of things, and as outlined there, we work closely with Cory and the team at BC Hydro, supporting those programs that he mentioned with the EV-ready fleet planning, battery energy storage, solar PV, and how we can integrate those into solutions. And that's kind of what we do at Prism. Our goal and our mission is to help organizations achieve energy, climate, and asset renewal objectives by integrating engineering, energy management, and sustainability services. We operate in various sectors throughout, including commercial buildings, institutional, industrial, and even multi-unit residential buildings. So generally, a lot of these organizations or that operate within these sectors, they have fleets, and we're there to support this on the consulting end of things. We also have multiple locations throughout BC to support BC and Western Canada. I'm out of our Victoria office in Victoria, or Vancouver office, I should say. But our head office is in Burnaby, as well as another branch office in Kootenays and another remote office in the Kelowna region. So EV-ready fleet planning is our focus, what we'll talk about here today, but we can support that with doing the fleet assessments. We look at the EV charging infrastructure assessments, as well as the design and implementation. So we're kind of there from the beginning, looking at the concepts, looking at what the organizations are aspiring to achieve, and then looking at ways we can help them reach those goals, and how specifically in terms of EV charging infrastructure, how that can be implemented, and then with the ultimate goal of getting those infrastructures actually installed and used to support the fleet vehicles as the company or the organizations are bringing those into their fleets. And of course, there's many questions, and we're there to both ask those questions and answer those questions that you may have. And there, as I said, there's many of them. When is the charging going to be happening? How many vehicles are going to be charging at one time? What is the load profiles of the buildings? All these questions we're there to help support and make sure they're taken into account in the planning process, because those all go into an infrastructure plan that will either we investigate if that can fit into the existing capacity of buildings and sites, or if we need to look at expanding those the electrical services or distribution systems. And it varies site to site, organization by organization. And we're there to help walk organizations through the process and get the answers to many or all of these questions to help get the best solution for organizations. And a key part of that is knowing the limitations, and in particular what the existing electrical systems have capacity to do. And we do that by looking at the data from BC Hydro of the main incoming services for the buildings, look at the ratings of the transformers, the distribution systems, panel boards, and seeing how we can fit in that charging infrastructure within those limitations. So, I mean, basically, if you look at your peak demand, that's one way you can see kind of where you're going. But a more optimized plan is looking at, on a daily or weekly profile, how the building load profiles or the site load profiles coordinate with the charging. And oftentimes we're seeing with fleets that the building peak demand is not occurring at the same time when the vehicles are going to be charging. So most often fleet vehicles are out operating throughout the day. They come back to the service yards 4 p.m., 5 p.m., and then plug in. And by that time, building operations have declined, so more capacity is available through those overnight periods, which is why BC Hydro has those special rates where you can take advantage of those overnight charging rates to lower those charging costs, lower your demand costs. But that's all kind of in the planning process and a key part of identifying when you can do those off-peak charging to both eliminate or lower the amount of capital costs on the infrastructure side, as well as on the operational side of demand and electricity charges, and how we can maximize that capacity. So that different technologies can be used to do that. EV energy management systems, or EV EMS, are a great way to do that. And those even closely track the real-time demand of the building or sites, and can then dynamically adjust the charging power and overall consumption to fully utilize that capacity. So during high usage periods of the building, the charging speeds or charging power reduces, so you're not exceeding the limitations of the electrical systems. But during low periods, then the charging systems get more power dedicated to them to speed up those charging times of the vehicles when the capacity is available. And the main advantage of that is that you're avoiding or potentially avoiding or deferring down the line further capital investment into service upgrades at your sites. And of course, as consultants, we try to stay up to date with the latest technologies and see what's coming down in the line, and looking at advanced strategies which can be implemented. And that's kind of the most exciting part of this industry now is there's so much change and so much technology and strategies coming out that we'll be able to have multi benefits from everything from solar to battery storage, energy management systems, and how they can all integrate, especially looking at kind of the vehicle to grid systems and how those can be used. I think it's going to be one of the most exciting things in the short term of the 5 to 10 year period is how these technologies are all integrated, and we're doing our best to stay up to date and keep a focus on what's coming to make sure that charging infrastructure put in today can be used going into the future, and you don't need to kind of rip things out and reinstall them as more advanced technologies come to market. And that's the consulting side of things.
Great, thank you. So definitely hearing some themes from the first panel down over to this one, do your planning and management. Okay, so we're going to move on to Chris Koch, who leads growth and partnerships at Hypercharge, driving market expansion, revenue growth, and strategic industry relationships. With over 15 years of experience in B2B technology, Chris has played a pivotal role in scaling early-stage and high-growth companies. His expertise spans technology sales, account management, coaching, and SaaS, positioning him as a key force behind Hypercharge's continued growth and success. So welcome, Chris.
Thanks very much. Yeah, very, very, very happy to be here. Been hearing lots of really interesting conversations out on the floor, so that's always good at an event like this, and hopefully this discussion can be equally interesting. So Hypercharge, we're headquartered just down the road here in North Vancouver, and we've been operating for coming up on 4 years now. And we deploy turnkey electric vehicle charging solutions. So we're bringing hardware, software, along with installation and support services delivered by us and a fantastic network of installation partners that we work with across the country, and in particular here in the Lower Mainland. These are some of the partners that we've been working with and deployed chargers with. We've in the last 3.5 years, we've deployed over 3,000 charging stations across a multitude of verticals. So not just fleet, but multifamily residential, workplace, retail, hospitality, really a wide variety of deployments. And so we've learned quite a bit in that time. And you know, the first thing that you know, we've really learned in that experience and really part of our ethos from the very beginning is we have to make the driver the star. The opportunity that we saw entering into this industry was that for the driver, there's a ton of friction in EV charging, and that's a real significant barrier for adoption, both at the consumer level, but of course at the fleet level as well. So that's one that I think we really want to make sure we don't overlook. The other thing that we've learned is that you know, fleets are not necessarily unicorns unto themselves. There's lots of different fleet applications, but a lot can be learned from other site types. You know, the other site types are facing very similar barriers when it comes to capacity, when it comes to you know, when drivers are actually accessing charging stations, when it comes to making it a frictionless experience. So there's a lot to be learned from, you know, multifamily, from workplace, from retail settings that can be applied into the fleet experience. Connected is best. So really what we're seeing in all of those site types is that a smart solution that has the ability to be remotely monitored, to be measured, those are the best path to creating and actually measuring your return on investment when investing in this technology. And finally, we really believe that flexibility wins. So, you know, it's super important to have those discussions that have been alluded to up front, you know, to really understand like what is required today, but also what is going to be required down the road, so that you give yourself the best option to future-proof the site. And also to pivot. Like if things aren't working, you want to be able to move from one solution to another as easily as possible. So really excited to continue the discussion.
Great, thank you, Chris. And last but not least is my colleague, Dave Sauve. Dave is the Director of Low Carbon Fleet programs at Coast Mountain Bus Company. With a background in automotive product development and low carbon technologies, Dave is a passionate change maker and is leading the team tasked with managing the transition of Coast Mountain Bus Company's fleet of transit buses and shuttles to zero emissions. Dave.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Coast Mountain Bus Company, we'll do a little intro on this. So those of you who don't know us, we sit underneath the Translink umbrella, and we are comprised of community shuttle, conventional bus service, as well as Westvan, C-Bus, and the paratransit Handy Dart service. So of that, we make up 65% of Translink's trips in 1 year. We serve a really large and diverse region. It's over 1,800 square kilometers across 21 different municipalities. And we have a fleet of 2,100 vehicles to serve this. Comparing that against other kind of major cities. So Toronto fits in our footprint quite nicely, as does Montreal and Chicago. So it's quite a large region that we're serving here. To serve this area, its topography is quite diverse. Its service types are very different. So we have a number of different vehicle types to do this. On top of that, we have a number of different propulsion types. So diesel, gasoline, diesel hybrid, trolleys, compressed natural gas, and now battery electric buses. In terms of transitioning such a large fleet, there's quite a number of challenges with it. But to break it down, we start with the vehicle life being 17 years. So we want to maximize the life of our asset before we transition it out. And because it's such a large fleet, we're able to do that. So some key requirements going into that is we have to target some of the lower energy density blocks first so that we gain competency running these zero emission vehicles. We're allowing time for technology development. So energy density getting larger in batteries is a key helping factor to this. So allow that to happen. We also need some more time to put infrastructure in the ground. It was mentioned before, but it's very obvious. Infrastructure has to be there before the vehicles get there. That's one of the hardest parts we're facing right now. And then the final part of our strategy and our transition is hit our climate targets. That's what we're here for. In terms of driving our transition, it's a data-driven transition. So we've modeled all 3,800 of our routes across the region against all different bus types that are available to us. And you can see we've got a pass or fail for each type of bus. Not all buses are created equal. You've got 40 and 60-foot buses, which are the kind of the bread and butter of our fleets. Those perform quite well once you add in en route charging. You get almost 100% there. But shuttles, you see, are quite lagging there. That technology in that vehicle has not developed particularly strongly. So we're kind of aiming towards 40 and 60-foot buses to start off with. Just summarizing success rates, battery electric buses with a hybrid heater, using in-depot and en route charging, on a 40-foot bus, 97% success rate. That's fantastic. That's today's technology, ready to transition right now. On the 60-foot side of things, 91%. So again, doing quite well. And then it kind of tapers from there down to 41% for shuttles. Looking at hydrogen fuel cell, which is what many other transit agencies, especially south of us, which don't have such a great relationship with the utility, even that's not a silver bullet. That's 70% with 1 fill per day in a 40-foot bus. And the other bus types don't necessarily have vehicles available at this point. So that all leads to a phased approach for our fleet. Leading in with 40 and 60-foot buses. Right now, we've got 15 buses on the road on the 40-foot category. And then through 2030, we're starting to introduce new fleet types. And then by 2035, hopefully tackling the shuttles at that point. That all kind of pairs nicely with the depot infrastructure. So we said you've got to have infrastructure in place before you bring the vehicle in, so we know when the vehicle is going to retire. Then therefore we know when the infrastructure needs to be there. So you see that ladder curve increasing our fueling capacity, our charging capacity at depots. And the same thing can be said about en route charging. So one advantage to Translink and Coast Mountain Bus compared to other transit agencies, we own our bus loops, many of them. Many of them are connected to SkyTrain. There's existing capacity there that we can potentially tap into. That's not something all transit agencies are able to do. And I'll end on a positive note, because I think we need some positivity in this industry lately. We have 15 battery electric buses in regular service right now. The numbers on here are tiny, and I apologize for that, but the curve starts in February of last year, and we were doing very little bus service with our electric bus. Fast forward to the kind of hockey stick curve that's introduced there. That's us onboarding those 15 battery electric buses, and you can see that nice steep curve that kicks up there. You see a couple bobbles that take place. That's us learning to operate these vehicles. That's us waiting for parts. That's us learning to kind of work out some interoperability issues with our chargers. But they're out there, and they're working very well for us.
Great, thank you so much. So we have about half an hour to ask this panel your questions, as well as a few that I've curated here. So maybe I'm going to start with a question, but if folks want to start thinking about what they might want to ask, either to someone individually or to the whole group, and try to catch eyes with, I think there's a couple of mic runners. So I will start us off, though. Managing power capacity constraints, we keep hearing the same sort of challenge. How are we managing power capacity challenges, and how are you supporting customers that are looking to electrify fleets to manage power capacity challenges?
I guess that's for me. As I kind of alluded to, we are working with customers to try to build out their fleet plans. But I guess the other elephant in the room that we should probably mention is everybody keeps saying, does hydro even have enough electricity? And how are you going to be able to do all this? And I think if all these loads that we were seeing from customers were coming tomorrow, I wouldn't be sitting up here, and I'd probably be swimming back over to the other side of the water. But I think, all joking aside, we're planning this out, and that's why we've done expedited call for power, which, as I said, is an 8% supply increase on our side. We've got Site C that all 6 generating stations will be coming into effect at the end of 2025. We've got energy efficiency targets now that are going to be delivered that look to be anywhere between about 3 to 5% additional energy supply. So we're actively working with this. And then beyond that, we're also working with customers to look at implementation of strategic energy management. So putting in battery systems so that we can peak shave, or looking at storage devices so that trickle charging can be done and then released at a faster rate if need be. So we are actively looking at those different opportunities to see where we can kind of continue to see the success and help customers grow. And maybe a small example that I'll give is one really successful implementation that we've recently seen is that one of the customers I've been working with has undertaken a massive lighting upgrade. And that lighting upgrade has now allowed them to electrify at least anywhere between 25 to 30% of their fleet, just because they're now not having to come back to the utility for a supply upgrade or a new service upgrade, just because of some of the efficiencies that they found within their own site. So those sort of opportunities are what we're continuing to push and support customers with, whether it be through fleet studies, as I said, or even doing incentive studies, or even implementation for energy efficiencies or battery options or load displacement. So.
Thank you, and that's a great answer, and I'm glad you tackled the big question about power availability or capacity. Does anyone else want to speak to maybe more localized challenges or on-site?
Yeah, I think we can provide some insight on the kind of building level or site level. I think one of the key things is to kind of get an accurate picture of what your constraints or your capacity is, because we've done a number of assessments where you talk to people on site, they say, oh, we've got no power left, we've got no capacity, so we're going to need to upgrade our service. But if we go in and look at it, actually just the data and the load profiles, sometimes that tells a different story. So you might see a breaker panel that's completely full of breakers, no spare spots to put them, but it all depends on what equipment is connected to those and when it's being used and how often it's being used. So getting a more accurate sense of the building loads and how they're actually being used is a key piece. And on the consulting side, we support that by looking at the kind of hourly or 15-minute utility data that's available to download, or if we're more concerned about kind of downstream panels that we need a little bit more information on, then we can install temporary power metering on those panels and figure out what the true loading is under real operating conditions, which the better data you have, the more informed decisions you can make, and you can plan your charging around those. As I mentioned previously, if the building peak is happening midday, but there's no charging that is going to be planned to happening during that time, and everything's going to be overnight, then you've got quite a bit more spare capacity to work with than you may think, just simply by looking at your utility bills or seeing that peak demand charge, because that is the peak that it's hitting for the month. You don't know necessarily what day that happened, what the conditions around that happened. So yeah, the further you dive into it and investigate it, the more accurate your solution and planning can be, which is I think one of the key pieces that needs to be accounted for.
Great, thanks. So dig into it. Dig into what you're already using or not using. Anyone else want to respond to that?
I think the only thing I'd add, like that upfront exploration is obviously critical. And then once you've got the information, you've answered some of those questions, it's obviously really important to have a solution to be able to bring, right? And so we've seen some really great innovation in the last couple of years around battery integrated charging solutions. We're moving from simple circuit level load sharing to a more sophisticated site level energy management solution, and those things can really help stretch what capacity exists today so that you don't necessarily have to undertake a huge upgrade.
Thanks. Maybe I'll ask one more, and I'll start on the far end before we go to the audience. What do you think are some of the key barriers you're facing in terms of infrastructure deployment?
There's few.
You've got a list.
Many. I guess funding's a key aspect. So a transition as long as ours is going to last at least 15 years. So it's a sustained marathon towards the goal of electrifying the full fleet. So that's one key aspect. The other is our depots are at capacity right now. So we strive to put out as much service as humanly possible with our fleets. And we have our depots just chock full of buses right now. So in order to electrify those spaces, like we have to displace operations, and that can be quite challenging. So that's kind of two kind of key things that are showing up for us.
Okay, so funding and sort of physical constraints. Anyone else, Chris?
I think one of the big barriers that we see is sort of this question of the chicken and egg. Do we upgrade our facilities first? Do we buy vehicles first? That question is causing a lot of hand-wringing, if you will, from some of the customers that we've worked with. And then I think generally the space is still pretty nascent, and so understanding CapEx versus ROI, it can be quite difficult still. So that's a constraint for a lot of our potential customers.
Great, thanks. Anyone else?
Maybe on the infrastructure side, funding is definitely a constraint that we hear from a lot of organizations, and there's certainly strides being taken to help with that, with the different programs that BC Hydro is offering in terms of fleet infrastructure funding. Up to 50% of infrastructure funding is available in most cases, which is great on that side of things. And then obviously Plug-in BC and other organizations supporting on the charging station fundings is great. But I guess one of the key things is just being aware of all the different funding options that are available, seeing how they can be incorporated into the plan. And I mean, I guess that the key word that keeps coming up is the plan. So having that plan in place, looking into the future, even if it is a long horizon, and seeing kind of as that adoption rate comes up, planning it out and keeping track of those funding programs that are available, I think is one of the key aspects.
Thanks.
Fine, I'll say it. I don't know if anyone's heard about this, but could be the tariffs or something like that that's creating some uncertainty. But I think what would also be valuable to say is just the supply chain from a utility standpoint. The lead time that we're seeing on some of the major pieces of infrastructure is quite significant, and not that I'm trying to butter up people that I work with, and I don't know, maybe he's on the panel sitting over the far left. But what I would say is that when we are working with great customers and when we are working with individuals, coming and engaging with the utility early on is really, really valuable. And we've been really fortunate to have great working relationships with customers like Coast Mountain, who have showed us kind of what they're looking to strive towards, and that we can work with them on what that means, kind of even site by site, doing capacity assessments, figuring out what we do have in the near term. And then that gives them hopefully some insights into maybe we need to pivot and focus on this site rather than this one. Or maybe we look at this en route charger rather than this one. Or coming up with creative solutions on maybe tapping off of an existing service rather than them having to go full-blown service upgrade to build a brand new service that's not going to be fully utilized for them. So again, it may sound cliche, but come and talk to us. We're not the worst people in the world. We like talking to customers, but I think it does allow us to help plan and work with you so that we can figure out what you need, and then maybe that means adapting the plan or maybe adjusting, but that helps also with the supply chain issues and equipment procurement and everything else like that.
It's better when you call Cory and Cory doesn't call you because your consumption's way up because your electric buses are doing so well.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I've certainly heard things about like long wait times for certain things like transformers and stuff. So maybe we'll go to the audience now. Does anyone have a question?
Yes.
Oh, okay. There's one here and there's one there. Okay.
This question is for Dave. Can you elaborate on what en route charging for public transport means?
En route charging. Okay, so our typical strategy is to charge in the depot. So we fuel our vehicles at night at the depot right now. It'll get topped up with diesel fuel, it'll come back. And so the same strategy applies for charging. We'll typically charge in the depot overnight. There are some blocks that we've identified, about 30% or so of the blocks, that exceed the capacity of the battery in the vehicle right now. Could be that it's a lot of steep hill climbs and the consumption is going to be really high, or they're very long, or they're heavily loaded. There's a number of factors that go into that says this is a very energy intensive block and it doesn't meet the battery capacity that's on the vehicle today. So what do? Do we buy another vehicle to replace that service? That's quite difficult because of the space constraints we have. It's also an expensive asset. So what we can do is charge on the road. So just like the trolley does driving down the road, it's charging. We can do that at the layover areas in a bus loop. So bus drivers have a typical layover time. That's part of their contract. And while they're sitting there on their break, the vehicle could be charging, topping up the energy level at quite a high rate, and allowing that vehicle that would otherwise be unsuccessful with a depot charge model to be successful with the opportunity plus depot charged route.
And maybe I can just add a little bit to that too, because it is a strategy we look at for fleets that have multiple locations and vehicles are not necessarily always going to be able to charge at a dedicated charging depot. Say there's different sites around the province when your vehicles will be traveling between. We look at public infrastructure that's along those routes that those fleet vehicles could utilize to make it a viable solution where if we're just looking at kind of point A, point B charging, maybe they can't make that distance, but if there's some fast charging along the route, then that strategy suddenly becomes viable. So it is something that we look at in those certain cases.
Well, I have two questions, one for Cory and one for Dave. And thanks, first of all, for this engaging post-lunch session. Cory, does BC Hydro export to US? And does this change anything now? And if you're going to save, that's good for maybe Translink. And for Dave, my question is, where does hydrogen fit in this? If at all BC produces hydrogen somewhere locally, if you have a hydrogen hub, what's Translink's position or CMBC's position on that?
I plead the fifth. Yes, we do. We do have cross-border contracts. We have a power trading division of BC Hydro called PowerX, and they do trades or power trading across not just the local utilities, but across North America. And I joke, but I think it is actually a really, really beneficial piece of what BC Hydro does, is the trading of power does allow us to keep our rates, I think, fifth lowest in all of North America for being able to provide that low cost for our customers. I think, given our current situation, that we will see how that all plays out and how things transpire, but I'm not the senior person at BC Hydro that makes all the decisions, thank God. But I think from our current standpoint, we are really benefiting from that, and I'm not saying this just to exclude the people or the nation to the south of us, but even in a small example is that for like Alberta, for example, if they need X amount of electricity, they'll turn on their coal generators and then they'll generate Y amounts. That excess in their grid will create havoc within their systems, and so they'll actually either offer it down at a discounted rate or pay different utilities to take that power from them. And we're in a really fortunate position because of our major hydroelectric dams, is that they can kind of serve as battery systems so that we can store our electricity and then use the excess from their grid. So there's a lot to unpack there, because obviously then you start talking about emissions and all that sort of stuff. But I think what I would say is that we are really fortunate with the trading of power across across multiple provinces and nations. So yes, we do. We'll see what happens. And Dave, go.
All right. On hydrogen. Well, I think hydrogen is a fantastic option for transit vehicles. There are many transit agencies around North America and around the world that are successfully deploying hydrogen vehicles. And so that's great. One of the kind of challenges and opportunities that we have in British Columbia is we have an abundant source of clean power. Now, the moment Cory says we don't have an abundant source and I can't provide you power anymore, I'm going to look very hard at hydrogen. But right now, with where we are right now, the cost of electricity is so low that it makes electricity very competitive. And if you think about what happens when you use hydrogen, you take the hydrogen molecule, you're going to put it through a fuel cell, you're going to make electricity, you're going to charge a battery, and you can propel a bus. The efficiency losses in there, they don't make sense unless you have a situation where that's the type of energy that you need to use. And so we've looked at it in a very agnostic way in our transition planning activities. And it's not in our current roadmap right now to have that, but we'll continue to take a look at it. And then where it makes sense to fit it in, we absolutely will fit it in if and when we need to. Where it may easily fit into our systems is things like backup power, things like added resiliency. A second fuel type would be an excellent thing for us to have. But right now, that's where we stand with it.
Thanks, Dave. Any other questions? Yeah, there's one back there.
In 15 years, some of your buses, batteries, will be coming to end of life for propulsion, but there could be a secondary use there. So have you started exploring the second life of batteries, like to Rob's point on V2G applications, or to support other use cases for those batteries?
I think I'm really looking forward to kind of this area where, what do we do with the batteries that come off? They're certainly not going to be at the end of their life, and there will be a great secondary use. You saw our plots of how many chargers we want to implement. There's a corresponding load demand with that as well. So I think there's a great opportunity for us to be using those batteries to kind of peak shave or reduce the amount of demand that we actually do need to pull from hydro.
Sorry to keep pinging on Dave here. But doing the math, 2,100 buses, 17 years, you're looking at 10 buses a month. So is the capacity there, or do you see the OEMs kicking up to provide that to you?
So in terms of number of buses, and it comes in bits and spurts, right? So there's a large tranche of buses that are associated with the 2010 Olympics, and so there's like big chunks of them coming in. So the trolley order was just announced the other day. That's 262 buses. So they come in like large chunks. In terms of the bus industry right now, it's not super healthy. We have just 2 OEMs offering buses in Canada, Nova Bus and New Flyer. There's an upstart called Latenda that's out there right now that's making a 32-foot bus. We actually have it running around as a test bus right now. You may see it over the next few weeks running around Vancouver doing various test routes. But whether it's a battery electric bus or a diesel bus, the capacity coming out of the factory is really similar. It's all constrained, and it is all really challenging right now. So we hope to see that industry kind of pick up and do well, but things like tariffs are going to make it really challenging.
So Adam, I have a question for you. So Dave, I'm saving you for a little bit. My question is, we've been hearing a lot about the power management systems for the fleet application. So what do you see the trend? Who's doing this kind of solution? Is it from a third-party supplier as a off-the-shelf product, or each customer, each user is developing their own fleet management system in terms of their power management? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of it is, it's ever evolving. A lot of new technologies are coming out, addressing challenges and gaps that were identified in the past. So that's the great thing about this industry is if a need for something arises, it's very quickly addressed from the various areas and manufacturers. We're seeing a lot of options come from charging station manufacturers in terms of management systems, as well as traditional electrical suppliers who'd historically be providing transformers and distribution equipment. They're getting into the power monitoring and load management systems as well. So we're definitely seeing a lot of options available, which is great. But I say generally it is a system that works with or is provided by the same supplier as the charging stations. Or an integrator, a third-party integrator who can utilize the communication capabilities of those chargers, either through the OCPP protocol or a similar communication method where basically it allows those charging stations to be monitored, controlled, adjusted dynamically to suit the building load signal, which either is from the same system or from another third-party monitoring system that then integrates with that fleet management system. So there are definitely different strategies, different solutions, but we've got a lot of options these days, which is great.
So I think we've got only a couple minutes left. 2 minutes left. So thank you everyone for your audience questions. I'm going to end it with one question for everyone on the panel. So all of this stuff is innovated, the innovation's been happening really fast in this sector, and I presume will continue to. What is the one thing you're most excited about that you see as something that's around the corner in terms of innovation in this sector in the next 5 years or so? Whoever wants to go first.
For me, it's all the different technologies and solutions that are coming in place and already being tested out, and those that are coming in the near future. Things like were mentioned, where the battery storage, whether it's integrated into the charging stations or an external site-wide storage system that can be used for various benefits, from load shedding, demand response, emergency backup, everything like that. As well as using solar PV panels to integrate with those systems to recharge the batteries, so you're not recharging off grid, which provides even more financial benefits. And then another interesting one is the vehicle to grid technologies, or V2G, which when you think about it, a fleet of multiple EV vehicles is just really mobile battery storage. And if those can be utilized during those non-peak, or I guess the utility peak periods, which we're seeing fall in between typical industrial commercial site peaks, which are midday, and then the fleet charging, which is happening overnight. And we're seeing the utility peaking between the afternoon periods, kind of 4 to 9 p.m. Can those vehicles then be used essentially as battery storage during those periods to help offload some of that utility grid congestion by plugging in at the end of the day and having the management system discharge those batteries onto the grid for the demand response benefits, and then recharge once at the overnight rates. And then it's kind of a multi-use, multi-benefit, multi-organization solution that I think is really exciting and doesn't seem to be that far away. So it's time to start thinking about that now. So when it comes in the future, you're not having to switch out your chargers, and hopefully manufacturers will start offering that V2G option as more of a standard option, or a kind of an over-the-air update in the future for a more seamless transition.
One thing that gets me really fired up about the next 5 years is, coming from a product development background, we can toil away in a lab for a long time, perfecting technology, getting it ready for the market. When it really makes the biggest difference is when it's working in the field. And so what fires me up the most about the next five years is the innovation that's going to take place on the the operating side of things, where we're going to have training programs developed, in combination with maintenance programs. We're going to start to see the savings come out of operating these vehicles, and I think that's going to be the most exciting part coming up, is actually using and deploying these things and seeing this gain traction. I get really excited when I see that curve going up about the number of kilometers we're doing that vehicle. It's going to bump around a bit because it's difficult, but when we overcome this, it's going to be a massive change, and I'm super excited for that.
Similarly, I think what we see coming is integrations between the platforms that the sites, the fleet managers, the drivers are all interacting with, which enable the drivers to have a really frictionless experience, whether they're charging in the yard, out in the wild, or if they're taking that vehicle home and charging it there. Wherever they happen to be refueling their vehicle, it's got to be a really simple solution that's measurable and that can be improved upon. And I see a lot of innovation happening there.
I guess maybe I think what I would say is similar to rubber hitting road. I think it's also nice to take a moment and realize that we are in a building with like-minded folks that have been kind of attending these conferences for a number of years, and now we're actually seeing a lot of the fruits of our labor. We're seeing stuff outside that was only talked about and was concepts on paper, and we're now in a place where BC's been recognized as a worldwide leader for electrified marine applications, and we're seeing new innovative technologies being implemented out on the road, and we're talking about electric refuge trucks. And I think it's really, really fascinating, and I'm completely avoiding your question, but I think it's really fascinating to see what we've done and also be excited for what's to come too. I think in the next 5 years, to totally geek out on you, I think it's going to be a really, really, really cool time in this space. I'm sure there'll be a couple bumps in the road, and I'm sure there'll be, I don't know, some catastrophic things, but I think there'll be some pretty phenomenal things too. And I think that's something to get excited about. And I think this forum and the ability for us to get together and continue to push those things forward is just an awesome opportunity. So thank you for letting me be here and speak, and thanks to the rest of my panel.
Yeah, thank you for the whole panel for the really engaging discussion.
Thanks for joining us at the 2025 Zero Emission Fleets Reconnect Conference. These conference presentations are proudly brought to you by Plug-in BC.